Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hare Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Hare Jai Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Hare Jai Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Banachare Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yagi ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. So, thank you all very much for coming, and of course, special thanks is to Mayapur Chandra Prabhu and his wonderful family, big family. And whenever, of course, I lived in UK for quite some time, and Gujarati community is very prominent in UK, and every time I'm thinking that Gujaratis are the blessing for the Sankirtan movement. Of course, it's very special position because, as some of you know, Gujarat was started by Krishna himself, because Dwaraka was established by Krishna, and so technically speaking, Gujaratis are all physical descendants of Lord Sri Krishna. And unfortunately, as we spoke with Mayapur Chandra Prabhu, many Gujaratis have forgotten about it, forgotten their great lineage, their great heritage, but luckily we still have some wonderful example of Gujaratis who are still faithful to their roots, and it's very special privilege to be physical descendant of the Supreme Lord himself. And yes, Mayapur Chandra and his family, they give so much support to Srila Prabhupada's mission, and we are very grateful for everything they are doing for so many years. And today's topic was not really defined, and so if you have any suggestions or any wishes, you can express them. Otherwise, we can just read one of the verses from Bhagavad Gita. And so, Hare Krishna. While you think, we can start with offering our respects to the spiritual masters, Vaishnavas and the Supreme Lord, and maybe someone could get a copy of Bhagavad Gita. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Utai Mahat Prema Puro Vibhur Nirmaya Kshete Yadamusha Purusha Bhungte Ganan Sadasa Sadasatmaka Yalang Krishishta Bhagavan Vacham Sime. So, let's see if anyone has any suggestions for the topic, any requests, we can follow any wishes you have. If not, we can read something from Bhagavad Gita. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we can read from the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is Transcendental Knowledge, text number 10. Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmayama mupashrita bhavo jnana tapasa putamad bhavamagataha. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. Purport. As described above, it is very difficult for a person who is too materially affected to understand the personal nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Generally, people who are attached to the bodily conception of life are so absorbed in materialism that it is almost impossible for them to understand how the Supreme can be a person. Such materialists cannot even imagine that there is a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge and eternally blissful. In the materialistic concept, the body is perishable, full of ignorance, and completely miserable. Therefore, people in general keep this same bodily idea in mind when they are informed of the personal form of the Lord. For such materialistic man, the form of the gigantic material manifestation is supreme. Consequently, they consider the Supreme to be impersonal. And because they are too materially absorbed, the conception of retaining the personality after liberation from matter frightens them. When they are informed that spiritual life is also individual and personal, they become afraid of becoming persons again, and so they naturally prefer a kind of merging into the impersonal void. Generally, they compare the living entities to the bubbles of the ocean which merge into the ocean. That is the highest perfection of spiritual existence, attainable without individual personality. This is a kind of fearful stage of life, devoid of perfect knowledge of spiritual existence. Furthermore, there are many persons who cannot understand spiritual existence at all. Being embarrassed by so many theories and by contradictions of various types of philosophical speculation, they become disgusted or angry and foolishly conclude that there is no supreme cause and that everything is ultimately void. Such people are in diseased condition of life. Some people are too materially attached and therefore do not give attention to spiritual life. Some of them want to merge into the supreme spiritual cause, and some of them disbelieve in everything, being angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of hopelessness. This last class of men take to the shelter of some kind of intoxication, and their affective hallucinations are sometimes accepted as spiritual vision. One has to get rid of all three stages of attachment to the material world: negligence to spiritual life, fear of spiritual personal identity, and the conception of void that arises from frustration in life. To get free from these three stages of material conception of life, one has to take complete shelter of the Lord, guided by the bona fide spiritual master, and follow the disciplines and regulative principles of devotional life. The last stage of the devotional life is called bhava, or transcendental love of Godhead. According to Bhakti Rasayana Sagar, the science of devotional service, Adaushada tata sadhu sangata bhajana kriya tato narta nivrittim syat tato nishta ruchistata adasakti stato bhavastata prema bhu danchati satha khanam ayam premna pradurbhave bhavet krama. In the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire for self-realization. This will bring one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. In the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master, and under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. By execution of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master, one becomes free from all material attachment, attains steadiness in self-realization, and acquires a taste for hearing about the Absolute Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. This taste leads one further forward to attachment for Krishna consciousness, which is matured in bhava, or the preliminary stage of transcendental love of God. Real love for God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage of life. In the prema stage, there is constant engagement in the transcendental loving service to the Lord, of the Lord. So, by the slow process of devotional service under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment, from the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual personality, and from the frustration that results in void philosophy. Then one can ultimately attain to the abode of the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna. Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mam upashita bahavo jnana tapasa putamad bhavam agataha. Being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. Hare Krishna. So this is the goal of human life, prema pumartha mahan, that develop pure love for God, so we can understand that happiness is not really possible without love, and love has to be genuine, because many people claim to have love, right? Some people love turkeys, especially on Thanksgiving, but I'm not exactly sure if turkeys share the same love. So there are many varieties of love we can understand, but the real love is completely selfless and completely pure, and it is the love which exists between us and the Supreme Lord, and includes all living entities as parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. So this is very high spiritual science, and it is slow process and very difficult to attain the topmost perfection. And so we may often ask ourselves, what are the chances for us? Because we can see that many people are coming, and even though they have some interest, but they don't really stay, right? And looking at the odds of the Kali Yuga around us, we might be wondering if we can ever see the change, right, in the world. But Krishna says that many people have become perfected by this process in the past. By two things, right? Jnana tapasa. So the three obstacles to overcome are vitaraga and bhaya, attachment, fear, and anger. And the two processes which help us are jnana and tapasya. Jnana means transcendental knowledge, and tapasya means transcendental discipline, which stands for practice. So theory and practice. Jnana is theory and tapasya is practice. And so jnana is really important. Understanding what Krishna consciousness is above and beyond any religious denominations. We understand that religions are many in this world, but spiritual truth is one, and it is very simple that we are not the body, but spirit, soul, part and parcel of Krishna, and Krishna is one and the only Supreme Lord for everyone. And it's very interesting to see in my travels around the world. I've been lucky. I've done 14 round the world trips, not trying to imitate Srila Prabhupada, of course, but somehow it's one of my attachments to travel. So I guess it's kind of utilized in Krishna consciousness. And Srimad Bhagavatam describes how the entire planet was Krishna conscious few thousand years ago. And it's not very difficult to recognize. It's not very difficult to see. Like there are so many, Hare Krishna, so many evidences. In some places these evidences are very obvious, in other places maybe less obvious. Linguistic evidences are plenty, right? Coming from Russia, I would say that perhaps quarter of the language is consisting of Sanskrit words. So many common words in Sanskrit and Russian languages, so it's pretty obvious that Sanskrit has been the origin. And of course there are Russian Vedas and very similar philosophy and practices to Vedic practices, and all the deities are there with little differences. Krishna is called Krishan and Vishnu is called Vishan. Actually, in some places in India it's still Vishan, right? They call Vishnu Vishan. So this is what they say in Russia. And even the word supreme in Russian language is Vse Vishni. So Vishni means above, right? And Vse means all. So one who is above all. So one who is above is Vishni or Vishnu. So many things are there which prove very simple point that this language came from Sanskrit and this culture came from Vedic culture. And of course then you have whole Central Asia with all the stans, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and of course India is also known as Hindustan. because stan in Sanskrit language means place, right? So, and there are so many remnants, obvious remnants of Vedic culture in all these places, including even deities, etc. The entire Europe, probably some of you know what is the very first object of religious worship on planet Earth according to the modern science. Anyone knows? Deity. What was the first deity worshipped by humans according to modern science in history? Huh?
You said that the first deity that was worshipped was the sun?
Yes.
Maybe the sun?
No. Physical deity.
Oh.
Form.
The Venus doll?
Huh?
Is it the Venus figure?
No.
No?
Older. Older than that. So, yeah. I think it would be very interesting for you to know that the very first, and it's not any secret information, it's available all over internet. He's very famous because this is serious. This is the beginning of religious history of Earth planet, 40,000 years. And the first deity worshipped by humans was Lion Man. Lion Man. You can check him out on Wikipedia. In Germany. And so, German Lion Man. Interestingly enough, Lion Man was worshipped in Germany 40,000 years ago. And amongst all these temples, we have 800 temples at the moment. There is only one single temple dedicated exclusively to Nrsingadev. And funny enough, that temple is also in Germany. And only 200 kilometers, what does it make in miles? 120 miles? Only 120 miles away from that place where the Lion Man was discovered. Modern Germans, they worship Lion Man every single day, and that is Simhachalam, right? Navajada, Nrsinga, Kshetra. Anyone incidentally been there to Simhachalam? Not yet. So, interesting. The history has its modern continuation. And so, then, of course, England is very interesting with the Stonehenge and Druids, right? Druids are the ancient priests of England. And of course, the name Britain comes from two Sanskrit words combined, Brit Anna. Actually, still in Celtic language, this is how Britain is defined, Brit Anna. And these two Sanskrit words, Brit means to maintain, to support, and Anna means to feed, to nourish. So Brit Anna, actually that's, if you look at the symbol of Britain, that's lady, right? Who is that lady? That's Mother Nature. And so, yeah, that in Britain the Durga Devi was worshipped quite recently, and still, I mean, just go in front of Buckingham Palace, some of you might have been there, you will see, the statue of Britanna and the 4 categories of people. 4 varnas are there: Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, all around. So, but the original deity of Britain was Matsya avatar, because there is an ancient legend how the great fish saved the humans at the waters of the flood, and how from the Isle of Man the whole country have been started. So there is one Prabhupada disciple, Yaduvendra Prabhu. He made thorough research based on work of one professor from the 18th century who researched Druids, and he made parallels with Dravidians of South India, and there are so many correlations between them: fire sacrifices, shikhas, and Brahman threads, and so many other things. So it's obviously the same Vedic culture. And Africa is also very interesting, because the original god of Africa is black youth playing flute. And in this country as well, if you look at the original Red Indian tradition, there are so many parallels with Vedic culture. Obviously, it's been the same thing. South America is even more obvious, right? And so we can see that there was unifying spiritual culture on the entire earth thousands of years ago. And so it is very important, what to speak of Southeast Asia, that is even more mind-blowing. Lately, I have looked more closely to Indonesia, because Indonesia is a very interesting country. You go to the capital, Jakarta, and you will see huge deity of, like sculpture of Krishna and Arjuna on the chariot. And then, of course, they have their Vishnu and Garuda. And it's like the largest Muslim country in the world, right? The 4th largest country of all. First is China, then India, then US. And 4th one immediately after US is Indonesia, population-wise. And number 1 Muslim country on the planet, because more than 80% of the population is Muslim population. And they have Krishna and Arjuna on the chariot in the capital, right? And when the president of Indonesia was asked, "Who is your personal hero, Mr. President?" without thinking 1 second, he said, "Krishna." And the reporter was shocked. He said, "Why Krishna?" And he said, "Krishna is very important personality for all of us here in Indonesia, especially the Java island, because this is the biggest part of the country." He said, "Krishna is our national hero because he had great power and unlimited knowledge. He spoke Bhagavad Gita. And so he's my personal role model. And I follow Krishna in my life." And the man is proper Muslim, right? And so, yeah, it's very interesting. It's so confusing that, even Muslims from other countries, they accuse Indonesian Muslims, they say you are not real Muslims. You are like Hindus. Why do you like Krishna so much? So, and of course, their national airlines are Garuda Airlines, etc. And two most popular epics in the country are Mahabharata and Ramayana. So, what to speak of Japan, where in the Emperor's Temple in Kyoto, in front of all the Buddha, in front of all the Buddha deities, they have whole lineup. Vishnu, Lakshmi Narayan, Shiva Parvati, Garuda, Indra, Vayu, and nobody knows what do these Indian deities do in Emperor's Temple, right? No one can explain properly, but everybody is worshipping them. And so, yeah, the Vedic past is very, very prominent and very obvious all over the world. And we understand from Bhagavatam that the entire planet lived in peace and harmony at those times, the times when Maharaj Yudhishthir and Maharaj Parikshit and the last one, Maharaj Janmejaya, were reigning the whole planet. And it's been always Srila Prabhupada's first purpose, right? First purpose of ISKCON, to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and teach all people the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and achieve real unity and peace in the world. So, yeah, it's very important for us to understand that we are not following any odd kind of religion or Hinduism or something like that. We are followers of Sanatana Dharma, which is the original spiritual knowledge and spiritual practice of the earth planet. And this is what everyone's really missing in their lives. And this is what Srila Prabhupada came to teach. And it's really great that all of you are either interested in that for yourself or already helping in furthering that mission. And of course, yeah, we do wonder how will it ever spread, how will it ever get established, because there are predictions about the 10,000 years of the Golden Age, which started with the appearance of Golden Avatar of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 535 years ago. So even though we are at the very dawn of the Golden Age, but still it's supposed to be developing. And it is developing. If we look at the last 50 plus years of the history since Srila Prabhupada came, but it's pretty slow, right? And Prabhupada says that in the purport that this process is slow, even though there is a saying that slow but sure will win the race, right? So, but yeah, it requires not just knowledge but also practice, tapasya, and it requires certain discipline and certain restrictions. Luckily, we have higher taste param dristvani vartate, because otherwise, if we would just have to follow restrictions, it would not be possible. But because we have a lot of things to gain in Krishna consciousness, and we do get that advantages, we can follow those restrictions, right? That who would need meat and other nasty food stuff if you have prasadam, right? And who would need intoxication, poisons, if you have kirtan and devotee association, etc. So we have positive alternatives for everything. But still, we need to do something about helping public to recognize the benefits of practicing Vedic culture and Krishna consciousness. And there are different things we can do, and devotees gradually are doing. And it takes creative kind of approach to help to establish this movement on solid basis. And one aspect we were discussing with Mayapur Chandra Prabhu, who is of course qualified professional, medical professional, and with Tiffany, who's been quite enthusiastic to do anything to help Prabhupada's mission, that kirtans have very interesting effect on health, because I've noticed that my mother, who's 80 years old now, also a devotee, practicing devotee, initiated devotee, and at some point she was always heart patient her whole life, and at some point she suffered 4 heart attacks back to back, in and out of CEU, ISU, right? ICU. So no one thought she will survive, but devotees prayed to her. She survived, but then she thought, okay, I won't have much more to live, so she wanted to go to Mayapur to leave her body there. But since she went to Mayapur preparing for her departure, she started spending a lot of time in the temple making garlands. And of course in Mayapur, kirtans are always there. And so she's been exposed to kirtans in the temple room. And after a while, she completely forgot about her heart problems. She got totally cured. And even though she's 80 now, she never complains about her heart. And also, many of those diseases are hereditary. And I've been always told by doctors and even astrologers that I'm a serious heart patient, that I have problems with my heart. I know it's very hard, but I never experienced physical problems with it. And I was wondering why. And then I was also thinking about Srila Prabhupada, who had 2 heart attacks on the ship. And he had some problems when he came to America, but after a very short while, they just disappeared, right? And never came back again. And I was thinking there is a common factor there. And why in our movement, we hardly have any problems with people dying from heart attacks. Even though heart failure, heart diseases are killer number one on the planet. So many people die every single day because of heart attacks. But not in ISKCON. And so my firm conviction is that it is because of kirtans. And remembering Bhaktivinoda Thakur's song, Shuddha Bhakata Charanarayana, that he says, when I hear the mridanga rhythms, my heart is dancing in ecstasy. So, and it is very likely that kirtans are very, very powerful therapy for heart problems. And so, and if we could establish that scientifically, I mean, it's pretty serious that Hare Krishnas have solution for the number one killer on the planet, right? And of course, we have so many wonderful Kirtaniya devotees, like our Premananda Kirtan Prabhu and many others. And it would be very nice to have so many engagements for them, right? And so that's why we really wanted Mayapur Chandra Prabhu, and he's been very enthusiastic about this project, and Tiffany to try to do something about it. And of course, America is the best place for these kind of things, because, you know, whatever happens in America, whether it is blue jeans or Coca-Cola or Mickey Mouse or Hare Krishna, anything which starts in America goes global automatically, right? So that's why we really wanted to get this off the ground in here in America. Of course, it takes time to organize. Tiffany tried, and I think ready to continue working on that, right? So, yeah, but this is like a little sample that there are things which we could potentially do which would affect public at large, go mainstream, right? In terms of Krishna consciousness. And, you know, because if that project would take off, definitely kirtans would become in the focus of public attention big time. And there are many other things, many other benefits which Krishna consciousness provides, which are not really explored and not really understood fully. But yeah, this is my humble conviction that there are many, many aspects which we could explore further. And it will happen. That the prediction made in scriptures and confirmed by our acharyas will definitely come. And so, but yeah, we have to have a desire, and we have to have determination to make it happen, rather than wait for it to happen automatically or wait for somebody else to do it. It's like one of our sannyasis is joking that there was a service which anybody could do, and then no, there was a service which somebody was supposed to do, and somebody was asking everybody to do the service, and at the end nobody did the service. So it is sometimes it is like that we might count on others, but at the end nothing gets done. But if we understand that if we don't do that, then probably it will never happen, and take personal initiative and responsibility, then definitely there will be change. Of course, in the beginning it's really important for us to fully understand the value of Krishna consciousness and great potential it has, and then we can invest our time and energy into serving the mission of the Supreme Lord. And it doesn't even matter whether we will succeed or fail, because even our failure will become great success if we do something for Krishna. Srila Prabhupada is the prime example. Because his goal was, as we mentioned, first purpose of ISKCON, to spiritualize the whole planet. And at the end he said, I couldn't do that. So we glorify Srila Prabhupada as extremely successful spiritual leader, but from his own, estimation, Srila Prabhupada was thinking, I failed. I couldn't spiritualize the whole planet. I didn't have enough time. I only gave spiritual knowledge and spiritual practices, right? But we can understand that his failure is greater than any kind of success people ever achieved in the material world. So this is Krishna consciousness. That's why in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita it says, Nehapi kramana shusti pratyavayana vidyate, that even there is no loss or diminution, and even slight advancement on this path can free one from the greatest fears in life, can become the solution for every single problem we can think of. So that's why if we try, it doesn't even matter if we succeed or fail, because we will succeed anyway. If we fail, we will succeed in very impressive way, but if we succeed, then nobody even knows what it means to succeed in Krishna consciousness, like that. So there's a few words on the subject, and if anyone has any comments, questions, complaints, suggestions, you're welcome to share. And incidentally, if someone does have interest to support Mayapur Chandra Prabhu and Tiffany with this project, I'm sure they will be happy to involve you in that as well. So that was a little advertisement at the end. All right. Yes.
Since no one else asked anything, it's my continuous question I ask all the swamis. That I had started out basically Christian religious beliefs, and moved on to more of a Buddhist interest and reading and studying, and eventually was introduced to because all those gods and all that, it just seems so inconceivable to me. I had somewhat success in meditation in the personalist arena, say, and did feel some satisfaction with that, going from like, the idea of God in the beginning Christianity, what they teach you in like Sunday school and that, God, a guy. So going from that to the impersonalist, it was a lot of work. It really, had to really expand my consciousness. And now to go to a personality is very difficult. And I keep, try to always have a picture of Krishna in chanting and, during the workday, bringing it to mind. I'm just thinking if there's any kind of, extra help for that sort of thing, to go then from impersonalist ideas to the personal. Do you have any suggestions?
How to go from impersonal to personal realization? Well, there is an intermediate step between impersonal and personal, and that is Paramatma, Lord in the heart. And so the biggest problem with impersonal concept, it's the first stage in spiritual advancement. It's bona fide, but the trap is if you just focused on impersonal, that is energy, right? But there is no person to control that energy. So and if it is just energy with no one to control, what's the temptation? That I can become the person who will control that energy. So that's the pitfall of the impersonal meditation, that, okay, it's all divine, and I'll be the one to push the buttons and make things happen, right? Basically, I become God. So, and that's why it's really hard to accept the personal aspect of the Supreme Lord, because if there is already someone pushing the buttons, then I become subservient again to that person. And I don't want to be subservient. I want to be independent controller, right? But then the intermediate stage is Paramatma, or Lord in the heart. And so the perfection on that level is to become a perfect instrument in the hands of the Supreme Lord in the heart. Because, it's really obvious that there is super consciousness in the universe. We can see that, for example, perpetual motion is impossible, right, from the standpoint of physics, that so many people tried to create perpetual device which has perpetual rotation or something, and so it failed because there is a law of gravity which does not allow this thing to happen, right? Everything comes to a standstill ultimately. But at the same time, we can see that every atom is perpetual, rotation machine. And the universe is all working like that. So we can see perpetual motion all around us, and yet we cannot replicate that at all. The laws of physics, they don't allow that. So interesting, right? So, and why this is happening? Because the Lord is in control already, so we cannot control things. I mean, it's interesting that material nature allows people to create an illusion of control for some time, but if you go deeper, you can understand that I cannot really control it. So it's within certain parameters. And yeah, it says that Supreme Lord is existing in every atom, and so why all the, what do you call them, electrons, right, rotating around the nucleus perpetually. Who is giving that energy, and whom they are rotating around the Supreme Lord, who is situated in every atom, in the same way as Supreme Lord is situated within the Sun planet, right? And so all the planets are rotating around, and so he is controlling everything, and the perfection of this stage is to forego of our desires to control and surrender to his control and do only what he wants us to do. So that's the intermediate stage.
How to know what his desire is and not your own. You know your own, but how do you know?
How do we know what the Lord desires? Yeah, that is obviously not very easy. From the beginning, that's why we have scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, and we have Guru, who is very well trained and very well attuned to the desires of the Supreme Lord. And so by these two, by the help of scriptures and Guru, we can understand what the Lord wants. And then after we achieved certain level of perfection in our spiritual practices, then from within we can understand exactly what the Lord wants from us. Thank you. Yes.
I wanted to say,
If you could please speak a little louder.
I wanted to say about the whole impersonalist God versus like the personal God. Actually, for me, it was kind of like it's kind of easy the switch over, because in a sense, like the impersonalist God is kind of scary to me. Like the idea of like just like this profound, incredibly huge energy that just doesn't care, that anybody could just tap into. You know, you're meditating and you're just tapping into it, and like yeah, and then like you said, there's all these people who then they say, you know, I am God, I can do whatever I want, you know. And so for me, it's actually kind of easy to think, you know, like wow, I would really much prefer a personal God that actually loves me, that actually cares, you know, that has all this incredible power, knows actually what to do with it, and is there for my best interest, because like I'm absolutely certain that there's power in the universe, you know, and I mean, you know, yeah, I prefer the idea of, you know, Krishna's there, and that Krishna knows how to use that power, and it is for best interest in mind, and that, you know, something to put your faith into, you know, because otherwise it's like, I don't know, there's a little like, that's my take.
Thank you. Yeah, ultimately, loving universe is so much harder than loving a perfect person, right? Such as Krishna. So yeah, it's very important that ultimately this is the perfection of life, to develop our love for the Supreme Lord. And that's why he is person, the most perfect person. And all the contradictory features are perfectly harmonized in him. Like he is the most powerful, and yet he is the most gentle, and he is the greatest, and yet he is the most humble of all. He is driving Arjuna's chariot, right? And he is washing everyone's feet at Rajasuya Yagya. So, person like that does not exist in this world. And so, if we learn more about Krishna, it's impossible not to fall in love with him. What to speak of seeing him in person, which can happen at a certain stage of our spiritual advancement. Even hearing about him is very fascinating. Yes.
Thank you for class, Maharaj. How do we become free from the propensity to criticize others?
That's a good question. Yeah, why do we criticize others? Obviously, it's envy, right? Because, say, if someone is really in very unfortunate position, someone is really low and fallen, we don't criticize those people, right? We take pity of them. But if someone is in a very high position, we tend to criticize them a lot, right? Like in Russia, they have the joke that it's so sad that every single person who knows how to run the country is already engaged, whether driving, or working, doing some kind of work. So they know perfectly how to run the country, but they don't have time for that, right? But because they know how to run the country, they criticize those who run the country, right? So, yeah, it's a very obvious tendency that we want to criticize those who are higher than us. And it's kind of natural, because it feels bad if my dream becomes fulfilled in somebody else's life, right? That's something I wanted and somebody else has it and I don't. And so I want to look for the faults in that person to prove to myself that he's not really worthy of that position, right? Like Srila Prabhupada told the story about one man who always criticized his friend, well, not friend, but acquaintance who lived in the same village. And then that man moved on, and then this critic heard that this man became a high court judge somewhere. And then he was really shocked. He said, he became a high court judge. This is impossible. How he could become a high court judge? But then everyone was saying, no, it's true. He became a high court judge. And he said, if he became a high court judge, the only possibility is that he's not getting paid anything for his job. He is doing that for free. That's the only reason they accepted him into this position. Probably he agreed to do it free of charge. So, envy is such an interesting thing. It blinds us to such an extent that we don't want to accept the reality at all. And so, criticism, tendency to criticize is based on, envy of others. And now, envy is the how you say, the foundational principle of material existence, right? We are only in this world because we envied Krishna in the first place, and that's why we came here. And that's why the world we're living in is the world of envy. And so we can never become free from envy. But there are two types of relationship with envy we can have. One is that we are envious of others, and the other one, anyone could figure out?
Other way around.
Yes, other way around, that others are envious of ourselves. So when others are envious of ourselves, when we succeed in life, right, then it's like very clear correlation. The more you succeed, the more you're going to have those who are envious of you, right, because they want to be in your place. And you won't have time to be envious of other people because you are focused on your success in life, right? And so that is the really answer to your question. The more you are focused on your own success, the less time and energy you will have to think about, problems with other people, because working on your success will give you enough problems to worry about. So you won't have time and energy to divert somewhere else. So like that, it's very simple. It's either us envying others or being in the position when others are envying us. And of course, it's not very pleasant, to be honest, to be in the position when you are criticized and envied by other people. But actually, according to Mahabharata, it's very beneficial, because it says when people are criticizing you, they are sharing their best qualities with you. They are giving you the very best they have, and they take the very, very worst you have on themselves. So, and if you realize that, you will tell, okay, bring it here, Keep it coming. Tell me more how bad I am, and take all my bad qualities, and let me become perfect in a very short time. So, yeah. And there is no third position. It's either others are envious of us or we are envious of others. And these are the two choices we have. All right? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. So in our preaching efforts to really spread Srila Prabhupada's movement, sometimes we come across that people we are trying to help guide, to go deeper to Krishna, may get attracted to practices that are against their best interests or things. How do we? Is there a place for some type of criticism, or is it, should we just allow, or how do we deal with people we're looking after in their spiritual lives? Or should we really more focus on ourselves and hopefully we just lead by example type of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, of course, teaching by example is not one type of teaching. It says this is the only type of teaching. We can only teach others by example, and there is no other way around. But if we want to help people to correct their mistakes, there are three things we need to be mindful of, and they are reflected in Bhagavad Gita 17:15 as austerity of speech. So we need to be really careful about what we're telling other people, Anudvega karam bhakyam satyam priyam hitam chayat swadhyaya abhyasanam chaiva vanmana tapochyate. So it says that anudvega karam bhakyam, that first consideration is that our words should not be disturbing others. So we should make sure that we don't offend others with our words. Anudvega karam. And then satyam. It has to be true. And so if we want to correct others or help others, we have to make sure that we do not try to correct something which is not there, which only exists in our imagination. Maybe we might think that others are wrong, but we might be wrong ourselves. That's why William Thackeray, in his Vanity Fair, he says that the entire world is one big mirror, and we really see ourselves in it. It's like Prabhupada would, that this principle of Atmavan Manyate Jagat comes in place, that Atmavan means like myself, Manyate, thinking, Jagat, of the world. So we're thinking, basically we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. We see everything through the lens of our consciousness, basically speaking, right? And so Prabhupada would give the example, it says that whatever faults we see in others, these are really our faults, otherwise we would not be able to see them. And Prabhupada gave this story. He said there was one man who was pretty deaf, even worse than Sagar Swami. And so he was with his friend in the room, and his wife was at the kitchen, and he's shouting to his wife, "Can you bring us some tea?" And the wife shouts back from the kitchen, "Just a minute, I'm bringing you the tea." But the man doesn't hear what the wife responded, so he shouts again, "Can you bring us some tea?" And then wife says, "I'm bringing that just now." And then he turns to his friend and he said, "This woman is completely deaf. She cannot hear what I'm saying." So he is deaf, he cannot hear her response, but his conclusion is that his wife is deaf, and that's why she cannot hear him shouting like that. So this is the first consideration. We need to make sure that whatever we say is true and not a figment of our imagination, that we haven't, misdiagnosed the situation. And the second one is Priya. Priya means pleasant. We have to, learn how to say unpleasant truth in a pleasant way. And yet it says that the real diplomat is one who will tell you to go to hell in such a way that you will be looking forward to the journey, right? So like that, there are ways how to say even like most unpleasant things in most pleasing way, but that's why it is austerity of speech, right? Gentleman's way of dealing. That's why Prabhupada would say that devotee is a real gentleman. And third one is hitam. Hitam means beneficial. So we got to make sure that whatever we are saying will really benefit the person. So it takes a lot of effort, a lot of thinking in order to learn to guide others in effective way. But that's one of the responsibilities of leaders, and since Srila Prabhupada expected everyone in this movement to become a spiritual leader, so that becomes one of our responsibilities. Hare Krishna. All right, so let's have last 5 minutes dedicated to Kirtan. Yeah. We have our Kirtaniyas here. And then prasadam. It's a little high. But anyway, 5 minutes. Huh? We can lower it down?
I don't think
Anyone knows how to do it? Oh yeah, okay. Now, very good. Yeah, that should work. That's much easier. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Sankirtan Yagi ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. All right, so Shri Shri Bhagavat Prasadam ki jai. If anyone wants ginger candies, you're welcome to have them. Ginger candies. It's good for the pandemic. Prevention.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Really grateful to you. Very happy that you could come here. And that's said, traditionally the sannyasi would stay for as long as you can milk a cow, right? And you're on your way back to Brooklyn tonight, or
Yeah.
in the city. So
Sure.
thank you for coming all this way. We're very grateful, and it's really a highlight for us to come in your association.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Wonderful insights on the Bhagavad Gita and just giving us such a broad picture of Krishna consciousness.
Hare
Its
Krishna.
relevance.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.